reduce the costs of their operations, reduce the cost of fuel, to bring about the next generation of productivity and efficiency in an industrial plant environment. This is the first time that I have worked in Pakistan, and the company is wholly sponsored by a Pakistani company, Daud Hercules Corporation, which is an investment firm interested in technology services businesses, and is committed to developing local talent, in technology. It's been a very interesting journey being back in Pakistan, still with one leg in the UK. But I'd love to share more about my experiences as we go along. Thank you.
Jeremy, tell us a little bit about your journey, because you've actually left Australia to come to Pakistan and do amazing things here. So we really want to hear that journey.
Sure. So I have a background in software engineering. I studied at UNSW, and I think wrongly at that point in time, I thought that I didn't want to sit behind a computer all the time and do programming. So I decided to branch out. How wrong I was, actually. So branched out and started doing some work around NGO management. I ended up coming to Pakistan on that basis, working here for about 4 years with 2 NGOs. And then in the process got involved and with my co-founder started Eco Energy, which we're still running. And that's very much in the sort of hardware and access to energy space. But strangely enough, the engineering background and I think the approach to problem solving has come in very, very handy, because I think like most businesses these days, it's very much tech enabled. But it's also kind of given me the approach that engineering background has given me the approach of problem solving, figuring out how to disassemble a problem, figure out the cause, and then maybe figure out a better solution or a more efficient solution to it.
Nabil, how about your journey? Nabil, you're on mute.
My bad. Hi, thanks for having me, Nida. So my journey started back in 2016 when I was just graduating from university. And what we saw was a social problem that we were very inclined to solve. And that's when we thought, all right, we must pursue this. So the journey started, we started with our incubation process at the Nest, and that has been a very learning process and full of new experiences. And that's been quite exciting for us, and we've been able to scale the business and learn a lot of new things along the way.
Mehek?
Thank you, Nida. It's great to be here. My name is Mehek. I'm a life scientist by background, not an engineer. I studied biochemistry at Oxford. I thought I wanted to be an academic. I did a PhD, as you often do if you're studying science. But I soon realized that most academic discoveries never really make it to the market. And that was something that was quite disappointing for me, because I had very different views of what it's going to be like as an academic. I then sort of just stumbled upon innovation entrepreneurship through some programs that I participated in during my PhD. And I found this space at the intersection of tech, healthcare, and commercialization incredibly exciting. And I think what was even more exciting for me was that I could really see it moving the needle for patients in a more immediate manner. And that's really what's always driven me. I then got accepted to this healthcare venture builder accelerator program. And through that, I met my co-founders. We had this technology which had been developed in the lab. We found an application for it. And then we subsequently raised a seed round, which then really kickstarted the company. And so what we're doing now is using photonics and AI to accelerate drug discovery for complex heterogeneous diseases. And our mission really is to be able to bring drugs for currently incurable diseases to the market. And it's really been a fantastic journey so far.
Perfect. Okay, Ammar.
Thank you, Nida. Thank you to the Nest team and the 021 Disrupt platform for this opportunity to share our stories. My name is Ammar. I'm a chemical mechanical engineer. I I've spent 12 years in the US, went there for my undergrad, and stuck around, worked in various sectors from renewable energy to nanotechnology, and then landed into the IoT space. And I moved back to Pakistan 3 years ago, and wanted to sort of focus on purpose-driven ventures, and bring best practices from a technology standpoint into Pakistan. And obviously, from all the problems, the one that was very evident to me was water. So I became really passionate about looking at solving water crisis in Pakistan, and countries like Pakistan. So so we launched My Water, which develops smart water treatment systems. And when I say smart, it's not just IoT based, but smart in the sense where you have to create scalable systems, and stuff that can be manufactured locally, and stuff that is accessible to various urban rural parts. My journey has been really great. We developed 90% of the technology in Pakistan with engineers in Pakistan. So yes, there were best practices I brought in from my network abroad, but solely it was very interesting to develop a technology that could be scaled up globally, and most of it was developed here in Pakistan, with the real engineers. Just with some direction and focus, it can you can really develop really good technologies that can compete on a global scale. So very excited to work out of Pakistan.
Okay. So as engineers, our main goal really is to solve problems. And technically speaking, all startups should have that goal, to solve a problem or a pressing need that our potential users have. So I want to understand, out of the hundreds of problems that we could solve here in Pakistan, why did you choose the problems that you wanted to focus on here? And what do you think would be, the scope of impact of these products that you are working on? And how do you think they will make a social impact here? And I think what's really important to understand is, yes, out of all the distractions we have and all of the things we can solve, why that particular problem? So let's start off with Jeremy.
Sure. So I mean, our approach was this, that our approach to this was that energy is one of the fundamental requirements for a productive society. That whether if you're living in a village and you don't have access to electricity, life shuts down at sunset. But if you're living in a city, you're running your own business, you're running a factory, or you're just living in a home, if you have unreliable electricity, or you don't have electricity because there's an outage or it's really expensive, that affects like how much energy you're going to use and how productive your business will be. So that's the problem that we set out to solve back in 2010, and then we started our operations in 2013 to really figure out how to get affordable and reliable energy access across the country. And I mean, I'm really thankful that over the course of that, how long has it been now? 7 years of kind of full operations, we've sold over 23,000 products to mainly to unelectrified communities across the country. And then in the past year, we've deployed around 700 kilowatts in urban and peri-urban areas alone. So we know that there's a huge appetite out there, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the market on the kind of products that we're selling, the kind of solutions that we're providing, and we're seeing that impact that it's having on us in terms of socio and economic terms.
Ammar.
Yeah. So just like Jeremy said, like energy, the other spectrum is water, and clean water is a that's a problem in Pakistan and a lot of countries like Pakistan. but technologies exist. It's there are filtration types, there are different kinds of technologies that exist. It's been decades. They're used all over the world in different packaged systems. But to the problem in countries like Pakistan and are of distribution. It's not of technology, and it's about how to scale from sort of in an inbound way, rather than just rely on importing things from abroad and just sort of creating a PR stunt out of it. But it's and the solutions have to be very simple, has to be very affordable. Obviously there's a market, right? Your problems, the problems are one thing, but the way you solve a problem sustainably is by creating a product that somebody would buy, whatever segment they belong in. And that's what you have to focus on as and engineering companies, is creating creating a product that somebody would buy. It doesn't matter if he's an industrialist or if he's a farmer living in a very rural part of the country. Everyone is wants to buy things, and you just have to create that value to them. uh, you know
Nabil.
Yeah, I'm going to further elaborate on Maslow's theory. So both Jeremy and Amar are working on very basic problems, and likewise we're working on housing, which is even more basic. Providing shelter is a basic human necessity. And unfortunately, we saw that in Pakistan, over 10 million housing units are lacking, right? And this is not just a problem in Pakistan, it's all over the world. We're lacking 1.6 billion people today lack adequate housing. And we saw this as a huge scalable problem, a huge scale problem that we could solve with better technology and better distribution, like Amar mentioned. So what we saw at that time was that we could create technology that could be more scalable in this sense, and which this sector has not seen yet. And how we can couple that with our own expertise. So my background in civil engineering helped us a lot. And that's how we started catering to the problem. But more than anything else, it's what you really care about. And we really felt for refugees and displaced communities. My team in general, we felt a lot about sustainability. And that's how we created our products, so that they could be scalable, create the maximum social and environmental impact. And when we're talking about problems in Pakistan, there are so many, but then there are so many opportunities as well. For example, our low cost of manufacturing, if we do manage to manufacture in Pakistan, there's a huge export potential for our products, and we're especially competitive in more developed countries. So there are a lot of opportunities there as well.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. I think you guys did your product when there was a refugee crisis going on in Pakistan too. We had a lot of displaced people in the northwest of the country. Sophia, what about what about why exactly are you doing what you're doing?
Okay, so I'm doing it for the love of engineering. I don't have altruistic goals like these guys have, because you have to think, in context that after, creating PowerPoints and Excel sheets for 12 years, I decided to, build something, and it was very exciting actually as an engineer. It helped me to, look at the technical problems, and rolling out IoT in a country where you don't have reliable internet and you don't have electricity and power. So how do you actually roll out IoT here, and what engineering skills we can use? And also set up something like, that you get response in 400 milliseconds, you at most. So these are I think I'm more concerned about engineering problems than trying to solve social problems. And that came later, actually, like, when we were preparing our pitch deck and all, and we said, oh, we need, this social side of things and impact and all that. But I mean, I started it as a business venture, as something that is fulfilling for myself, first, because I saw an opportunity. I saw something where I can, my skills, my experiences, all could contribute. So, I'm not one of those people who thought of a particular problem, but obviously I think whatever we have built, over the years, we got a lot of demand, and we could develop products very quickly. So now I think our turnaround time for any product is 6 weeks. We can provide IoT services in a country which has unreliable internet, unreliable power, unskilled people, very little, awareness about technology and adoption. So that kind of thing that we do in all the 4 verticals where we work, be that industry, agriculture, smart cities, or enterprise sector. They all need energy conservation. They all need to optimize their operations. They all need to become profitable. Those businesses have to become profitable using our technology.
Salman, what about empiric AI? Why is it doing what it is doing?
Hi, Nida. I think carrying on a little bit with Sophia's comments, I was personally excited about the coming together of AI and IIoT as a very significant innovation wave that could impact the world literally, because industry is at the heart of what's produced and what we consume. Manufacturing, these manufacturing plants, manufacturing is a sector I'd never worked in, and when I understood manufacturing and went and visited a number of plants, and I saw how much data these plants had that had been there for years and years, thousands and thousands of sensors churning out exact conditions and states of every little aspect of a plant. But none of that data was really being used, or it was being used in a very reactive mode to troubleshoot when something went wrong. And more than that, most of these plants were using very basic tools such as Excel, literally, to analyze data. And we are talking about thousands and thousands of rows and data that's being produced, as Sophia said, literally every second or every minute. And so, having worked mostly in the financial services sector and the tech sectors, I was amazed as to how much of a laggard the manufacturing sector was, in particular the chemical process industries, in adopting what I considered to be, mainstream technologies and not even 21st century technologies, but perhaps 20th century technologies. So I didn't start out with this mission, but bringing the manufacturing sector into the 21st century has become a motivation for myself and the company. And we are leveraging AI, IIoT, analytics, really to give plants the tools that will help them to make a difference in improving performance, reliability, safety, efficiency, productivity, but also to reduce wastage and also to consume less. So that's kind of why we're in it, is to really make a difference and hopefully be successful as an organization as well.
Okay, it's really cool because that's one of the problems that I was really interested in as well, and I thought that would be something that I will do later on here as well. So it's always actually good to find someone else solving the problems, because then you can focus your attention on something else, right? Mehak, what about you guys? Why are you focusing on what you are focusing?
Sure. So for us, it's actually sort of quite a common problem that scientists usually face when they're spinning out a company, usually from university. So we had this technology platform. It had shown incredible potential. We knew what we could do with it, detect molecules in blood, but we had to find an application for it, which would not only be technical, but also would have a large commercial potential and would be something that we would all be aligned with in terms of our personal motivation. So I mentioned that we were this part of this accelerator program for brain health. So through that, what we did was very methodically, we narrowed down a few applications, disease areas, and then we just went out. So we were typical needs discovery and validation process. And what we found was that in brain health, dementia is one of the biggest problems, one of the highest sort of social and economic burden, but at the same time, we don't really have a drug for any of the dementias, but especially Alzheimer's disease in the market. We then also, kind of figured out how we could make the process, this drug discovery process, more efficient. We found a few companies, a few pharma companies that were willing to back us. And really, I think for our investors, that's what did it for them. So, when your customers, potential buyers, are really describing the need and, putting their names together on a piece of paper, that's really one of the best validations that you can have. And in terms of sort of, economic and social impact, it's quite easy to justify that, as we're supporting, these companies directly who are developing these drugs for a disease that currently has no cure. So it's kind of, really obvious, and it's all sort of aligned with what we all wanted to do as well.
We keep on getting comments in our feed about how this panel is extremely inspirational for everyone. So I'm really excited to discuss the kind of work you guys are all doing. While we do this work, and especially for us startups that are in Pakistan, we face a lot of challenges, and I mean a lot of challenges, especially due to bureaucracy. In my case, as an engineering services startup, we have double taxation due to provincial taxes and federal withholding tax as well. 8 years ago, 7 years ago, we had a 7% excise duty. Now we pay 13% services tax and we pay 10% withholding. So basically our taxation has more than tripled over the last 8 years. So what kind of challenges have you been facing here in Pakistan as an engineering startups? What would you like to highlight here through this session? And after this question, we'll talk a little bit about what kind of solutions we have for that as well. But I will start off with Nabil.
There are definitely a lot of challenges of working in Pakistan in terms of ease of doing business. Getting money into the country is very difficult, especially if you're getting a grant. You have to sign an MOU with the Economic Affairs Division, which takes months sometimes, and a lot of startups, their payments are returned multiple times. Similarly, getting money out of the country is impossible. A lot of paperwork. If you want to import something small, that's very difficult because you're not going to open an LC for everything. So a lot of things like that. And why is this so important for startups is because as startups, we have to follow regulations and compliances much better than most companies, where most companies do find other ways around these things. But especially if you're foreign funded and are working with larger organizations, your policies and compliances and controls need to be there. And the government needs to step up and really make things better. And in some cases, the government has developed better policies, especially for the IT sector, but I don't see as many improvements for the SMEs and manufacturing industries in Pakistan. So that's something I would like to see.
Okay. Sophia?
So I think every day there is a new challenge. And sometimes those challenges keep repeating when you are doing a business in Pakistan. I think the biggest challenge is about the awareness. As Salman also highlighted that, we are dealing with laggards, and it is extremely difficult to roll out a 21st century product or service here and, make people understand. I'll, exactly as you started this, that, the blurb about our session that went out initially said that, engineering is a new discipline for innovation and entrepreneurs coming in. And, if someone like, here, who is at the cusp of entrepreneurship and promoting innovation is talking about this, so there is really a gap on the awareness side. And it's so prevalent in this country that almost every 3 months I decide to quit, but the next day the excitement of doing things actually, bring me back to the business. I'll give you another example. Like I was pitching our solution to one of the largest ISPs for their remote site monitoring, for energy monitoring, for equipment monitoring and all that using IoT. And operations manager, he told me how they manage and how many people they have and how many windows they can open on a screen and look at different equipment remotely using SNMP, which is 1980s technology, and they also have a person who can scroll up and down and see when something goes wrong. And on my way back, I was like, I'm in a wrong country. Altogether in a wrong country when I am trying to sell IoT to the largest ISP, all our internet backbone runs on them, and they are telling me that they can live without doing remote monitoring, without adopting any new technology. So that's the biggest challenge that we have. The second challenge is that the talent. I mean, forget government. I don't want this government to get involved in anything, because whatever they touch turns into dust. But the talent that we get, is absolutely horrible. I mean, we haven't been able to inculcate creativity, risk taking, all of these things that you need as an out of the box venture, which is not like, I'm not selling fashion goods, I'm not selling food, I'm not selling this. So I think that is a challenge. Technology, so awareness, talent. And I think my particular challenge has been that when I go and talk to the customers, or even general public, nobody expects a woman to be talking about 21st century women technology. So what they say is like, as a woman, why aren't you in e-commerce? Why aren't you doing food delivery, fashion, education, health, and what are you doing on plant side? I travel from site to Port Qasim to Kimari to Kurangi and all these areas, and the first reaction that I face is this, that they don't accept me. So there are a couple of challenges here. And I mean, Nabil has all rightly said, ease of doing business is horrible. As a startup, we have to comply to a lot of things to protect the small setup that we have, but a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I know the challenges of working as a woman here, but I must admit, this is there all over the world. By the way, Europe has it worse, honestly speaking, because there were just 1% women in my engineering department in Switzerland. So, Jeremy, let's. Oh, before that part, I will debate one of the questions, one of the responses you gave about this being the wrong country, because I feel as entrepreneurs this is the right country, because there's so much to do, so there's no lack of opportunities and potential for us to be working on here. Jeremy, let's hear about your challenges. Yeah,
I said we can
I'll
take
go on
this
to Jeremy's part now.
Go for it, Sophia.
Jeremy, let's hear about your challenges, and especially also as a non-Pakistani. What are the challenges you felt when working here and dealing with administrative and bureaucratic and other challenges and cultural challenges here?
Sure. I mean, not being from Pakistan, I think one of the sort of people working here, non-Pakistanis working here, face is around visas. It's a very laborious process, but I think that's fairly niche. Maybe my circumstances is a little different from most, and you don't get a lot of foreigners coming to Pakistan and kind of setting up shop here. But yeah, it has been a big difficulty over the years, and thankfully now it's resolved. But the other big challenge that we face, just quickly, is around taxes. It was mentioned that, I think you both mentioned that taxes become a problem. You have service tax, etc. But the impact of that is that we become uncompetitive on the market. In a price-sensitive market, it makes us uncompetitive, because if we're competing with a local market vendor on who deals only with cash, their product is going to be significantly cheaper than ours. And then the other companies that we may be bidding against for a particular deal, they're also figuring out how, maybe they're keeping a cash book and a digital book, and they're figuring out how to evade the taxes. So it's very difficult in that situation to compete. And well, it forces us to be inventive and to figure out, well, what else can we provide you? Do we focus on the after-sales service? Do we focus on the quality, etc.? But it would be nice not to have to, to have a more equal playing field there.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the challenges part here, but let's also talk about the challenges of scaling up. Okay, what's keeping us back as entrepreneurs from getting our products out there, getting them, getting a market that's actually interested in them, even understanding do we have a market for our product, right? So what are the challenges we're facing at that level, and what are the solutions from it? And from the solution part of view, and even maybe from a critical point of view of the way we are doing things here, I want Mehak and Salman's answers on that. But I think Sophia definitely had views on why we are not scaling up and what challenges we are finding in our ideas. So I'll start off with Sophia for that, but then I want Mehak and Salman's view on what do we need to do to stop getting things wrong. Okay.
So I think generally the society, the businesses and everything is in the 19th or the 20th century technology. And I think most processes just require, if we talk about automation and all, most processes generally require an Excel sheet, and that's being used there. So when we look at the opportunity, as I told you earlier on as well, I drive from site to Port Qasim and to Korangi and Lanti and all these industrial areas, and even from our agricultural deployments to Badin, to Mirpur Khas, to Swabi, Abtabad, whatever, wherever our devices are, we see huge opportunity of automating things, of improving things. Like in the fintech industry, there is an opportunity to leapfrog and implement latest technology, get rid of all the archaic processes or practices, and bring new technology. And it will be much cheaper to do that than probably invest in Europe or US in terms of cost of doing that. It's not a lot. And with our technology, we have developed something like with minimal internet power backups and all that, how you can actually keep the systems alive. So opportunity side, if I look at it just from what can be done, it's huge. But as a businesswoman, when I look at the opportunity, what can be materialized, it completely becomes zero, right? It's just because how our businesses are used to working on. I'm not just talking about industries, I'm talking about banks, I'm talking about our potential customers who have pockets, deep pockets to pay us. They themselves haven't done the digital transformation. So IoT, AI, all these nice things that we are talking about are needed in a business environment, in an industrial environment, in an agricultural environment where there is a need for digital transformation. The organizations haven't really done the internal digital transformation, so their procurement processes are archived, right? And they want you to submit your 3-year financial statement, your income tax returns, and all that just to pass through that, right? And even then, one of their cousins would come and take the project, right? So we still are very tribal in whom we will give the business to. The criteria for evaluating our companies are archived, so the businesses take long time. I found some hope in going directly to the industries, because which I found is much simpler in the decision making process, because you go to the state and if you can convince them, you get this. But even then, like when we go to implement this on the plant level, and Salman would know, working with plant managers and all that, we are actually entering their Chadrahat or Chaudhary level and disrupting that, and that is difficult, right? So even when we do the first project with them, the second takes a lot of time, because then you have to actually not just convince this, fight the internal politics in the organization. So I think the biggest challenge in materializing the opportunities is the digital transformation that has to happen within the organizations, the mindset, the economy and everything. So I mean, as long as everything can work on Excel sheet, they'll continue to do that.
Jeremy, you had, when we were talking about this before, you had talked about the problems and challenges of sales and distribution for products. Can you touch a little bit on that before I get to Mehek and Salman?
Sure. So we started off as a sales and distribution company, selling someone else's hardware products. And we actually chose, I think, one of the hardest sort of distribution problems in terms of going to unelectrified villages in rural Sims, people that don't have a lot of money, that are really far and really expensive to reach. But I think as well, like we've also learned about how important it is to have sales and distribution with a hardware product. Obviously, actually, it's not just sales and distribution, it's also marketing. Because you can create a product, you can create the most fantastic product, but if people aren't finding out about it, they don't have a way to get that, whether it's from a website or whether it's someone standing at their door and presenting it to them and trying to sell them on it, you know, that product won't sell, and you're not going to reap the rewards from the product or the service that you've developed. So I am a proponent of the marketing, sales, and distribution are really, really important for any kind of engineering or hardware startup. And now kind of where we're actually developing some products and platforms of our own. So we realize that if we can develop this, we can tweak it in the lab, but until we actually get it out there and figure out how to sell it, who to sell it to, it's just like, it's an idea, it's a concept that's not actually going to achieve the objective that we want.
Mehek, what do you think we are doing wrong? Do you think we just design for the sake of designing and not actually make products that people want? Or what do you think the engineering startups are getting wrong in Pakistan?
So, Nida, I can speak from my experience of what we found really beneficial, both sort of from a company perspective, but also on a personal level. We strongly believe, disruptive innovation comes at the intersection of different fields. And that's where you see universities and research centers playing a really important role. And for us, developing a technology which is quite cutting edge, it sort of spans multiple fields. You have life sciences, AI, photonics, software. So the way that it really started off was actually a physicist speaking to a clinician to figure out what problem we could potentially solve using a technology that had actually been built in the lab just for the sake of building a technology. So that's really been sort of the thread throughout for us, being able to collaborate with different people, in a university setting or outside, being able to share ideas and have access to all of this expertise. And I think there's really sort of a lot of opportunity in Pakistan to be able to bring and build these cross-disciplinary centers where you can perhaps sort of adopt the same model. And I think the other thing that universities are great at is something that Sophie also mentioned. It's allowing people the creative freedom to be able to explore ideas and experience what it's like to be an entrepreneur. For me, my university played a really important part as part of my journey as a founder. I found out about entrepreneurship through various activities. I met all of these people from various different backgrounds and worked with them, different ideas, and just sort of experienced what it's like to be able to take risks and build something from the ground up. I feel like now universities in Europe are catching on to this. In Europe also, there's a bit of a lag compared to the US. And I think increasingly what we're seeing is sort of through that earlier access, there are more people who are coming out with, this desire to look at entrepreneurship as a viable career option. Something that, I think universities in Pakistan are also catching up to, but there's, I feel like, a lot that we can learn through other places in outside the world.
Salman, what do you think that we as engineering startups can learn from more established companies? What do you think we are doing wrong, and why do you think it's harder for us to succeed here?
Yeah, I think, Nida, I would echo some of the comments made already, around talent and around true innovation, being driven by cross-disciplinary teams. For us, the biggest challenge was and remains finding experienced talent. It was something, again, that I was surprised about working in Pakistan. And then, I realized there were not a lot of, this is just really a reflection of where the tech entrepreneurship is in Pakistan, in not just hardware but in software.
Maybe at the board is not to talk about the concerns they've got or the issues that they actually have within the business until normally it's too late. They're like, we don't want to disappoint outside of the norm. The likelihood of you getting it right, cautious and managing costs extremely tightly. When you've got more money in the bank, I'm not to say that you go out and you start selling ping pong tables and you start spending it in an uncontrolled way, but the acceleration of the business there is a level that is expected. And so working at the different pace is I think is something that founders really struggle with. I'm just thinking there's some comments that are coming in. All right, okay. The Q&A is after. So one of the areas that I find actually helps founders after you've raised the money, we make all of our companies do what we call a 100-day plan. So, and whilst we're doing due diligence before we close, we actually sit down with the founders and we say, what are the key things that you want to achieve in the 100 days? Because that's something that you have control. Worrying about what's going to happen in 12 months' time, there's too much fluidity. But quite often when you're raising the money, it's to hire a number of new people, it's to build out the product, it may be to launch your product. So working on a detailed 100-day plan, and it just cover very much like the HR, the marketing, the product. So it doesn't have to be a huge number of things. And you break it down, we find into like 30 days. So it's, we call it 100 days, but reality is it's over 90 days. And figuring out what are the key deliverables you want to actually achieve over that time post-investment. And I think that really helps kind of focus founders on what they need to do as soon as the money's in the bank account. Because I'm sure there's lots of founders actually sitting out there and saying, well, fundraising is pretty much a full-time job and it can take you 6 or 9 months to raise the funding. And within that time, the plan that you are presenting probably has changed dramatically to the one that you're actually going to do because of the time. And because you haven't been involved so much in running the business, sometimes you have to get your feet back under the table and get on top of things that might have slipped whilst you were focusing on fundraising. Because very rarely do you have people in an early stage company that can kind of cover for one of the founders, and normally it's the CEO who's running the business. So I think, setting up so just kind of like covering kind of some of the main things that you can do to actually alleviate some of these risks is, I think, having a regular newsletter with all of your investors, setting up a proper board, and identifying which are the best people to be on the board. A lot of founders are very much, we just want people who are going to agree with us. I actually think it's best for you to find people that will actually challenge your thinking. If you have the choice of who sits on your board, and I admit you don't always have that, the role of somebody like myself being on a board is I'm always there. I'm going to be supporting you because obviously I've just invested in you, but I'm there to challenge and very much play the devil's advocate and make sure you've thought of all the different options. And then the last thing I would suggest is just doing this 100-day plan to actually kind of help you really focus post-investment on what you want to deliver. And what some founders actually do, they then do a rolling 100-day plan because it just really helps them kind of really focus on the key deliverables in over the next 3 months that they've got to achieve. So on that time, I think I've just about run out of time, but hopefully that's given you some kind of areas to be aware of post-closing and some of the ways that you can actually overcome those risks to make sure that you give yourself the greatest chance of success post-investment. So I'm happy to take any questions that people may have for me.
And thank you so much for your talk. We do have a few questions for you. And thank you for your time as well.
My pleasure.
Yes, all right. Let me just begin with the questions. There's one question that asks, what are their mistakes when raising for the second round, when you raise funds for the second round?
I think there's a saying that is commonly used is a founder should always be fundraising. And I think it's a lot of the time it's slightly misunderstood. If I came to you and said, "Hey, I'm Michael, will you give me $1 million, please?" You're like, "I've just met you. I have no idea who you are. Thank you very much." But it's amazing how many times that's what founders do. But if I say to you, "Hey, I'm a founder. I would love to actually spend some time having a coffee with you," and then you build a relationship between us over the next 6 months to 9 months. And then in 9 months' time, I say, "Hey, you know what I'm doing. I like you, you like me. Do you think this would be, if I raised $1 million, is this something that might be of interest to you?" The likelihood of you saying yes is much higher. So the idea of always fundraising is you should always be building relationships with the next round of investors. So I even say to companies, when you're closing your round, still talk to the next round and just say to them, we're not looking for money right now. We've just closed some money now, but we'll be raising in a year or 18 months. What are the kind of KPIs that you want me to hit? What would make you interested in what I'm doing? And if they're interested, you can see their level of interest, because if they've got no interest, they're not going to have regular meetings with you over the next year. Because sometimes a lot of people will take that one meeting just to get an understanding and do a bit of high level, but they're not going to have regular updates with you if they're really not interested. And it gives you a chance to actually get to know the investor, to see if it's somebody that you would want to work with, somebody that you would want to actually invest in your business. So I think the biggest mistake is not building relationships with investors for the next round. And also remember, quite often, signaling is a big thing. If going back to that, don't forget your investors. One of the questions a lot of our companies have when they raise the next round is Cocoon investing in the next round? Is Cocoon investing? So if you get a VC coming in at the first, so people love it when they get a VC in early, but you've just got to make sure the VC wants to invest in the next round. They don't have to be the leading it. They've got to participate in it, because otherwise the incoming investors will say, well, if Cocoon doesn't like it, and they follow on normally, why? The signaling looks really bad. Do they know something that you don't? So that's why it's really important to make that, just, to have that relationship investor as well as your next investor.
Very true indeed. And there's another question for you, Michael. What are some of the things founders should consider about investors when they take their money?
I think that the thing that always amazes me with founders, and I was a founder many years ago as well, and I must admit I didn't follow my own advice back then, is I am surprised how little due diligence founders do on the VCs. We're professionals at getting people to take our money. We all promise the world, and to be quite honest, a lot of VCs don't deliver that much apart from their money. So what I would say to founders is do the due diligence on the investors. And the easiest way to do that is you can always find companies that they've invested in. Don't ask for them for introduction. If you ask me for an introduction, I'm obviously going to point you in the direction of the founder that likes me the most. But all of my companies are on my portfolio or on our website. Reach out to founders and actually say to them, look, and ask the right questions. Don't say, is Michael a nice investor to have? Or is Cocoon, are they good people? Very rarely are founders ever going to say no. ask like more specific questions, like when things were going wrong, what did Michael do? Did he stop taking your phone calls? Did he try and take advantage of the situation, or did he roll up his sleeves and try and come up with solutions and try and work with you? And I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I can actually give to a founder. Take what the VCs or the investors take at face value. Do your research. We're going to do your research on you. So do the same back to us. And if any investor takes insult to asking to do due diligence on them, then that's probably because they've got something to hide. And I've always said to founders, it's better to take no money than the wrong money. You know, you're getting into a relationship. If somebody's taking money from me, on average, we're going to be talking to each other for at least the next 8+ years. If you don't want to be working with somebody who thinks an absolute...
Sorry, there's a bit of a lag here, but I was like, I think it eventually again comes down to building that relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Eventually. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for being with us today. That was fantastic.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
My honor. Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye. All the best, everyone.
Bye. Yeah,
bye-bye.
You too. All the best. All the very best. And that was Michael, and he really spoke some really good things, very relatable stuff, to be honest, for me, somebody who's not from the world of tech, you know, no businesses right now of my own, but I have my dreams and my plans. Totally relatable and very understandable, and yeah, building a relationship. You know, it's difficult for investors in Pakistan as well, because we have so many stories of, you know, things not coming through. Like he said, investors not picking up your phone, the people who've taken your money just disappear on you. And these things are very real and very relevant. So I'm glad he touched upon those points. Thank you so much once again, Michael. Now I'm going to introduce you to our next speaker, boys and girls. Very excited about this speaker as well. Also because I use her products. Her company is a fantastic company, and I totally respect her. I'm so excited to hear her because, you know, I've been using her products, the products her company creates, and they've done wonders for my skin and my hair and stuff like that. So I'm quite excited. And I was like, oh my God, we're speaking to her. I use these products all the time. She's the CEO and founder of Co-Natural. And let me tell you a little about her. Myra Qureshi, joining us she's next. She's an amazing woman. She's a visionary. And as a CEO and co-founder of Co-Natural, Myra Qureshi has...
Great. And can you see my screen? Great. You can see my screen? If I do that. Great, perfect. Okay, thank you so much for having me at the O21 Disrupt. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Myra Qureshi Jahangir, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Co-Natural. Today's talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey with Co-Natural, our value proposition, and why we created Co-Natural, and how we were effectively able to message our value proposition through social media and e-commerce. So as I get started, I want to first talk about as we started Co-Natural, what was the things that we were looking to change and what the local landscape of the beauty industry was in Pakistan. So one of the salient features in the Pakistani industry with beauty was an obsession with skin whitening. And there was this, we felt, and this still exists today, but 4 to 5 years ago, there was this subliminal conditioning of being fair, an obsession with being white, that how can I just, and the beauty questions that were constantly being asked was, मैं गोरा कैसे हूँ, मैं चिट्टा कैसे हूँ, मैं अपने मुंह पे क्या लगाऊं कि मैं 3 दिन में चिट्टा कैसे हो जाऊं. And culturally being white was a status symbol and incredibly desirable. And we saw that under the pretext of this whitening fairness fad, there were cosmetic manufacturers locally and big FMCGs, which were dominating the skincare market with whitening creams, and sometimes using very harmful ingredients to go to that end of consumers being white. And we were shocked when we were researching this market that even multinational companies were using culture-based advertising and celebrities and influencers and talking about how being white was desirable. And they were creating a psychological need within customers to use dangerous products. Check out some of these ads. You still see some of them today, but 4 or 5 years ago, they were massive in Pakistan. So check this out. Huge newspaper ad, Ab Gora Hoga Pakistan. Check out the subliminal messaging here. It was that that there's nothing wrong with Pakistan, and if it becomes white, suddenly we're a greater nation. There's so many things wrong about this ad. Is that if you're white, you're better. Check this out. There's this always stuff like this makes me laugh. That even the matrimony ads in newspapers. So this guy is looking for obviously a future wife, and it says in the ad that he's fair, but he's looking for someone very fair, and that's a condition. There's so many things wrong with this at so many different levels, but this was happening, still continues today. Check this out. This is actually for men, which makes it even worse. I've actually deleted the brand name, and this was an Indian ad, but very, very relevant to Pakistan as well, and I've seen it. It basically says, transform your face on Facebook. And it says, be prepared. If you only use the screen for 1 minute a day, you're going to be white, and hence you're going to be cooler on Facebook. And if you're dark skinned, then you're not as welcome, you're not as cool on like social media. Check out the subliminal messaging. Again, so many things wrong with this, but like how this is playing with the consumer mindset of how being white or fair is desirable. Similarly, this is an excerpt from a TVC that played on TV. And check out the messaging here. It says, healthy white complexion from within. What is a healthy white complexion from within? A healthy white complexion can only be the outside. Again, it's a play on words for subliminal messaging for buying a product to be white or to be fair. And again, so many things wrong with this. Similarly, if you look at some of the ads which are promising these claims that, if you use a product and within 3 days, you're going to be 10 skin tones lighter. There's so many things wrong with that as well. I mean, on one hand, it's the subliminal messaging, but on the other hand, can you imagine the number of chemicals and harsh chemicals or harmful ingredients that must be in that product to turn you from like black to white? And when we were doing our research, we were actually shocked that in Pakistan, the number of companies using high levels of dangerous chemicals, and when I mean by dangerous chemicals, I'm specifically talking about two here. One is mercury, and the other is steroids. Now, mercury is an arsenic compound, and is the only ingredient right now known to man that's going to give you results such as that you can see in this photo. But it's a toxin, it's a banned ingredient, it's a neurotoxin, it causes reproductive problems, and it causes cancer. And steroids is no joke. I mean, steroids is a pharma grade product, and it's usually used in like life-threatening situations. And yet people think that it's absolutely okay to put it in skincare products. And we thought that we wanted to put this skin fairness obsession and talk about it, and talk about the terrible number of chemicals, harmful chemicals that were being used in skincare products when we started Go Natural. Let's also look at the rest of the local landscape of what the local landscape was when we set up Go Natural in Pakistan specifically. So A, we've talked about the dangerous levels of carcinogenic chemicals in products. B, there was a lot of false advertising locally. There were products being sold on the shelf as 100% natural.
Log on to it, and for the next 1 hour, engage with our speakers and the workshops. And of course, don't forget us, and keep tweeting and keep sharing your learnings at #021Disrupt2020. I'll see you guys at 2 p.m. sharp on the main stage. Thank you. Take care.